All right, this is for Wednesday, January 27th. What is an example of a recent time where you weighed the cost of an action to the benefit received? This is going to be maybe a time when you purchased something, and that purchase that you made, there was a cost for a certain amount of dollars, and there was a benefit for whatever the benefit of that item was. Well, that would be an example of a cost benefit analysis. So tell me about a time when you did that, or even the action could be something maybe like the cost of going to the gym would be that you don't get to study for that time. There'd be an opportunity cost there. So, but there's a benefit obviously to going to the gym as well. So tell me about a time where you weighed the cost of an action to the benefit received.
With unlimited wants and limited resources, scarcity is going to happen. And that will cause us to make trade-offs. Now, trade-offs happen every single day. And we as humans have to make them all the time. Should I go hang out with my friends tonight, or should I study for this test? That's right there, time. Should I go out to an amusement park, or should I save that money for later down the road? Should I drink water or pop? All of these are different trade-offs. And with trade-offs comes opportunity cost. Now, an opportunity cost is our next best thing. If we decide to go with option A, option B would be our opportunity cost. If we weren't doing this, this is what we would have done. It's the next best option. So an example of this would be if you want to study for your test tonight, you have a huge econ exam tomorrow and you need to study, but all of your friends are going to go out and watch a movie and then play video games after, and you want to do that. You have an option. You have to decide which one's best. You'll weigh your pros and cons, and let's say you decide to hang out with your friends. So you'll maybe study the next day for econ, but you're not sure. Well, what that would be then is your trade-offs there between the two options. You chose to hang out with your friends. The opportunity cost would be getting a good grade or studying for that test. That is what you've decided to give up. It's your next best option. If you weren't hanging out with your friends, you'd be studying. So hopefully that makes sense for trade-offs and opportunity costs. They happen all the time. But the key thing with opportunity cost is it's your next best option. It's not if I had 10 things to do that day and I narrowed it down to 2, the other 8. No, it's just the next best one. So always remember that with opportunity cost. If I wasn't doing this, I would be doing that.
Okay, so that leads us into cost-benefit analysis. Cost-benefit analysis is what we did in the bell work, and that is where you compare the cost of an action to the benefit received. A lot of times we're going to talk about cost-benefit analysis in terms of money. So we're going to talk about the benefit of something that you purchase. Maybe it's a new item of clothing, right? The benefit is going to be something like it looks good, it'll keep me warm, it'll whatever all the benefits are, and the cost is going to be whatever you paid for it, right? So that is going to be a cost-benefit analysis. Could also happen with time. The example that I sort of gave during the bell work is what is the benefit received of going to the gym? Well, that would be aerobic exercise, keeping yourself healthy, all kinds of things that would be helpful are the benefits of going to the gym. But what is the cost of going to the gym? Yeah, we're talking about maybe a monthly enrollment fee, things like that. But there's also the cost in terms of the opportunity cost of what would you do with that time. Time spent going to the gym is time not spent with friends. Time spent going to the, or maybe it is. Maybe you go to the gym with your friends. That'd be a 2 birds with 1 stone sort of thing. But maybe time spent at the gym is time spent not studying or not doing your homework or things like that. So there's always a benefit and there's always a cost. But what if you had 2 choices that were both equal in benefits? Well, in that case, it's not a trick question. If there were 2 choices that were equal in benefit, you would choose the one that has less cost. Because in all these cases, we're doing a cost-benefit analysis. So if I say I have 2 items that are exactly the same and one costs $5 and one costs $10, you would obviously choose the one that costs $5. And you might say, well, there's a brand name involved. No, don't worry about that. In this case, they're the same brand. Everything's the same about them, but one costs $5 and one costs $10. You would obviously choose to keep $5 and buy the one that's $5. So every decision you make involves a cost-benefit analysis, even if it's a very simple decision. Should I stop for breakfast this morning? Well, what's the cost of stopping for breakfast? The cost of stopping for breakfast is whatever you pay. There's a financial cost. And also, there's the cost of the time of going through that drive-through. So that would be a cost benefit analysis. What about going to college? Is there a cost of going to college? Of course there is. There's the cost of tuition. There's the cost of room and board and housing. Is there a benefit to going to college? Well, of course there is there. There's the education and the degree that you earn. There's the experience, the possibility maybe that you'll make great friends or meet a spouse, all kinds of things. So there's a ton of benefits and a ton of cost to going to college. So if you're talking about a college decision, maybe the first thing you're going to do is you're going to decide whether to go to college. Well, what are all your trade-offs? Well, your trade-offs for going to college are, besides going to college, would be that you could maybe join the military or join the workforce or join the Peace Corps. All kinds of different things or maybe go to trade school. These are all different trade-offs that you have for going to college. So what is the cost of college and what is the benefit? You have to decide, is the benefits of this education and this experience, are they going to be worth the cost of going? Maybe that cost of going is $50,000. Maybe it's $250,000. And the difference there would be obviously what school do you go to. So now if you've decided that you are going to college, now you have to decide what school you're going to go to. Maybe on the one hand, you could go to USC Upstate and pay $10,000 a year for tuition, total of $40,000, and live at home so you don't have to pay for room and board. And so you have to ask yourself, okay, well, maybe that's one option. And the other option is to go to Georgia. And if I go to Georgia, it's obviously going to cost a lot more. It's just a more expensive school in general, but also it's an out-of-state school, and you're probably not going to be commuting from Greenville to Athens, so you're going to have to live on campus. So all of the benefits of going to Georgia, the fact that you can go to Bulldog football games, the fact that you could live on your own in Athens and have this great college experience, the fact that maybe you would make a network and create connections and go where you've always wanted to go, those are all benefits, but those all come at an additional cost. The additional cost could, at the end of the day, be $100,000 or more to go to a school that is more expensive. And so you're not only deciding, is it worth it to go to college? What is the cost of college and what's the benefit of going to college? But you also have to be careful to decide, what is the cost of going to college B instead of college A? What is the cost of going to Georgia instead of USC Upstate? And what is the benefit of going to it? And is the benefit of going to Georgia compared to USC Upstate worth the cost? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. We're going to talk more about this when we get into personal finance. We're going to talk about, well, what if that choice instead of Georgia was Clemson? And you get the in-state tuition price and you get all the other stuff the same. Well, now is it worth it? Well, maybe you don't like Clemson. Maybe, I don't know. So you have to make that decision. Either way, we're talking about a cost-benefit analysis.
Another important concept in economics is this idea of thinking at the margin. In addition to looking at opportunity costs, economists also look at the costs and benefits of adding or subtracting one more unit. In economics, marginal means additional. That is very, very important because we're going to be using this term throughout the rest of the semester. We'll talk about marginal costs. We'll talk about marginal benefits of anything, whether it's a decision, whether it's money, whether it's producing one more unit, it doesn't matter. So the marginal cost is the extra cost of adding one more unit. And the marginal benefit is the extra benefit of adding one more unit. And as long as the marginal benefit is greater than the marginal cost, it pays to add one more unit. An example would be, am I going to study an additional hour this evening, or am I going to go to bed early? Some of you say it doesn't benefit me to study another hour. I went to class every day. I listened, I took all the notes, I understand clearly. There is clearly no benefit for you spending an additional hour studying. So for you, the cost is higher than the benefit, you wouldn't do it. Some of you have missed class, some of you haven't watched any of the videos, some of you don't understand. So you're thinking, okay, maybe if I watch these videos one more time and take an extra hour, I can definitely see my grade go up. So you're going to weigh the costs, you're going to weigh the benefits of doing that additional hour or that and producers do it. If I add one more employee, are they going to bring in more than what they cost me? If they will, then I'll hire them. If they won't, then I won't. So as long as the benefit is greater than the cost, then you will go ahead and do it. So thinking at the margin and opportunity cost, these two go hand in hand in economics. Many decisions are not all or nothing. You can do less of one thing so that you can do more of another. you might, instead of spending $100 on the jeans you want, spend $50 so that you can take that $50 and do a few other things. So, the marginal cost and marginal benefit, how much do you want those jeans? What are the things that you have to give up? And if I take a little less of the type of jeans I want, then there are other things that I can get.
Okay, so before we get to talking about Adam Smith and Wealth of Nations, I do want to briefly explain marginal cost and marginal benefit, and that's thinking at the margins. So I want you to think about, imagine that you are really hungry as you have ever been, and you come upon an apple tree, and you realize that you have to climb up into the apple tree in order to get the apples. So since you are as hungry as you've ever been, the benefit of getting an apple is obvious, that you can sort of satisfy some of that hunger. The cost of getting the apples, well, maybe the cost is the energy you have to expend to climb. Maybe the cost is that you risk hurting yourself and falling out of the tree. Maybe the cost is that it's not your tree, and so you would be stealing the apple. Whatever the cost is, maybe you decide that because you're so hungry, it's worth it for you to go ahead and climb this tree. And so you climb the tree and you eat the apple. Well, after you eat the first apple, the cost of climbing up the tree again to grab a second apple is the same, right? You still have the chance that you might fall and hurt yourself. You still have the chance that you might get caught, or because you're stealing, you still have the energy you have to expend. But the benefit is less than it was before because you've already eaten one apple. You're less hungry than you were before. Maybe you decide to do it again a second and a third time. Well, at a certain point, because the cost is the same, the benefit is now less than it would have been because you are not quite as hungry, right? So we're thinking at the margin, we're thinking about what is the marginal benefit of getting one new apple. It's much less than it was before. What is the marginal cost? Well, it's the same. So now at a certain point, we stop doing it. When I was working at McDonald's in high school, I made $6.75 per hour. And if you ask me, is it worth an hour of my time to work at McDonald's for $6.75 when I was 16 years old, I would have said yes, because I had no other way to make that money. Well, what about now? What about now when my situation has changed? You ask me, is it worth working at McDonald's for an hour for $6.75? My answer is going to be no, it's not worth it for me to do that, and I'm not going to want to do that. So that's something that I have to think about, and that would be operating at the margins. It's still 1 hour of work for $6.75, but the marginal benefit to me is less because now I have more money in the bank. That same concept could apply. If you offer me a job working overnights for $200,000 a year, even though I hated working overnights when I had to do it for the police department, I would say, sure, I'll do it for $200,000 a year. But if you ask Bill Gates the same thing, it's the same cost to him as giving up his overnights to do that, but it's much less benefit for him because he already has that money. So it would be less in that way. I want to talk briefly about Adam Smith. Adam Smith wrote a book called The Wealth of Nations in 1776. In it, he argued that labor becomes more productive as each worker becomes more skilled. That would lead to specialization. He was in favor of specialization. He says that competition and free markets guide resources to their most productive use. That would be as opposed to the government, right? If the government is deciding what gives things its most productive use, that is the least efficient way to do that. You know that because if you've ever been to the DMV, you know that the DMV is not an efficient place. Why? Because the government isn't motivated by profits. But if you've been to Chick-fil-A, Chick-fil-A is very efficient because Chick-fil-A knows that if they take too long with your order, you're going to go across the street to Zaxby's or Bojangles, where there is no going across the street if you want to go to the DMV. You have to get your driver's license, and it's the only place. He applied that to all of the resources of a society and said that those resources are more intelligently guided by the free markets than the government, and he came up with the idea of laissez-faire, which is he believed in no government intervention. He believed that anytime the government intervenes, that it's going to be negative results, and that the government should just stay out of the private business.